Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Accelerate Your Performance podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Janet Pilcher, founder and president of Studer Education. I'm entering this week with such positivity and appreciation for a productive week of learning. Last week, we proudly hosted our virtual Destination High Performance K-12 Leadership Conference, and we learned so much together. If you joined us, thank you for your time and your investment in your own learning. If you weren't able to attend, stay tuned for our next event. You can keep an eye out for our events by going to studereducation.com/events. I look forward to continuing to follow up with all of you as we share our different events and connections with you. One of our many master classes at last week's conference was facilitated by my guest today, Kathy Myles, one of our exceptional coaches. Under Kathy's guidance, we explored the idea of listening to learn and using feedback as a gift. And it's so important for leaders to have the right mindset about listening and feedback. Otherwise, the value of feedback is limited. If you missed Kathy's mini masterclass at our conference, don't worry. She will be hosting a webinar on Tuesday, May 12th from 11:30 to 12 Central Time. She'll be talking about two tactics that she taught in her mini masterclass last week. Going a little bit deeper, I've invited Kathy to the show today to talk about her mini masterclass last week, and she'll touch on the two tactics that she'll present at her webinar in May. You don't want to miss it. Kathy is really super talented and such a great coach. Before we get to my discussion with her, let me tell you a little bit about Kathy. Kathy Myles is a Studer Education leader coach, and she specializes in research and evidence-based implementation for educational organizations. Driven by a strong moral purpose, she develops practices that foster belonging for students, families, and staff. Recognizing the need for collective effort, Kathy implements strategies to cultivate a positive adult culture aligned with the organization's vision and mission. She collaborates with partners to strengthen education, impacting students' daily lives. Her experience includes supporting K-12 schools across Wisconsin, higher education systems, and national senior leader development programs. Kathy has an extensive background of working in our educational systems, and she, as I mentioned, is a fabulous coach and one that I rely on tremendously. So let's welcome Kathy to the show. It's with great pleasure that I welcome our leader coach, one of our strong leader coaches, Kathy Myles, to the show today. Welcome, Kathy.
Hi, Janet. Thank you so much for having me on Accelerate Your Performance podcast today. I'm excited to talk with you.
Sounds great. So we're coming out of our K-12 DHP virtual conference, and you shared some teachings in our mini masterclass on listening to learn and using feedback as a gift. So what does it mean to you, Kathy, to listen to learn, and how do we do that?
Well, we had such a great masterclass, Janet, and we talked about the idea that really listening to learn means that we are listening with the intention to understand, that we're not looking to respond, we're not looking to defend, and most important, we're not looking to fix it. But we really want to understand the perspective of the person or the group that is talking with us.
I think that's so spot on in terms of we're not looking to fix it, Kathy. I love that. I know when I first started coaching, I only speak for myself. My tendency was when people would present a problem, like I wanted to solve it. I was like, I wanted to, just solve it for them. And then I'm like, no, that's not my place. It's just processing and listening. And, that sometimes that's hard to do.
Oh, it's very tricky. We really sit in a space where we think we make things easier for people when we solve. But really, the more that we can understand, people are able to solve their own problems if we give them that space and support to do that.
Yeah, so good. So in our work with partners, we often say feedback is a gift. How is feedback a gift?
Well, feedback is a gift when we pay ridiculous attention to people. Let me just start there. We're really leaning into what they're telling us. And when I think about it being a gift, from a coaching standpoint and from a leader standpoint, I think about that iceberg visual, right? So there's only so much I can see or so much a leader can see on the top of that iceberg. But if I understand that I'm listening to know your perspective, then it gives me the opportunity to see what's beneath the surface. And what's so cool, Janet, and you talk about this all the time, one of the things that it lets me see are the bright spots that I don't get to see. So it gives me an opportunity to identify those bright spots that I can scale and make happen more consistently across the organization. But it also, of course, allows me to surface barriers before they become a crisis, too. Now you're not coming to see me and talk with me because there's a problem. I'm asking you for feedback so that you can give me some preemptive information to move forward with before it becomes a bigger problem. So we talk about at Studer that it accelerates improvement. So it takes the decision making that we do, it's aligned to real organizational needs that have been stated versus the ones that I assume we need because of the limited vision that I might have.
Yeah. And the visual is so important, Kathy, in what you're saying. And, one of the things that just hit me a few minutes ago when you were talking about it helps us to see the bright spots that maybe we wouldn't see, like we're uncovering those. And I was on site not long ago, and it was just kind of anticipated with the newness of the leadership team coming together for the first time under newer leadership that you wouldn't see the bright spots that were really I was going in looking for where the gaps, and then what came out of that when I leaving, was that wow, there were more bright spots that appeared than we had anticipated. We
Mm.
saw areas of improvement like what you're talking about, but really listening and giving people that opportunity to engage in this discussion sure did what you talked about, and that is lifting up those bright spots. Thanks for pulling that out because I think it's really important.
Yeah, I like that you speak about people come wanting to do the right work and they want to be a part of this. And so when we're able to highlight those bright spots for them, it just strengthens the culture that we need in order to get the harder improvement work done.
Yeah, so good. So let's talk about listening to learn. Listening to learn and gathering feedback with the mindset that feedback is a gift. Sometimes seems easier than it really is. In fact, I just talked about that a few minutes ago because we want to solve problems. So, what are some of the challenges that leaders face with these processes, and how can these challenges be overcome?
This question takes me back to when I was a young leader, and you're not going to agree with everything you hear, but you do have to start by listening. And so the very first lesson that I learned was to not take it personal, right? It's about the system. It's not about a person. And as a leader and as a coach, even when I'm even doing getting feedback from our partners, I have to keep my eye on the why. What is our purpose for doing this? We want to use this feedback to get better at getting better, whether we're serving families, staff, students, partners, etc. And then the other part of that, I think, is to really make it a part of our system. It's the expectation that I want to hear from you, not just if there's a concern. But this is how we do this, right? We have cycles of feedback that we engage in because your voice matters. And we can't do this without you. So it helps us with our alignment, it helps us with our implementation. One of my favorite quotes for leaders is you'd hate to be leading and look behind you and see there's no one there. So it
Yeah.
helps you bring folks along with you.
Yeah, so good, Kathy. Just really thinking about the value. I love what you said. It just becomes part of your system. Are you embedded within your system? It just becomes part of what you do. It's not like let's go out and figure it out, but it just becomes part of how you engage as leaders within a system. That systematic process of gathering feedback. Really, really good point to highlight. So let's think more specifically for a few minutes. What are some tactics? So we're talking conceptually about feedback as a gift and really listening and paying ridiculous attention and processing that feedback. But let's talk a little bit about some tactics that we can use so that we can hardwire some of those behaviors.
Well, last week at the session, we talked about two tactics specifically. And the first one was plus delta conversations that we have. And it allows for the people that are joining us for the plus delta to reflect. And then we invite them to engage in an environment that we create that's safe. We want to know what's working. What can we do better? And the other one that we talked about last week was the 3-2-1 process. And I really like that because it's a great way for a leader to show show what they learned. And I have to say, even as a coach, Janet, I use 3-2-1 a lot of times with the partners. I will do a plus delta at the end of a session, and then I will go back in because you have to remind people what they told you sometimes and say, look at this. This is what you all shared with me. These are three great opportunities. These were two areas that there was a concern around. And this is what I, as a leader coach, am going to do about it as we move forward. And sometimes it can be a simple thing like, partners asking me about just sharing my slide deck 24 hours before I come on site. That's a simple thing for me to do. And if that makes everybody feel better and it makes the environment safer for people, then the work that we do together when we're partnering, that helps move that along. A couple that I didn't talk about last week were the pulse surveys, where you can just go in and check and see if one idea that you're implementing, how that's landing, and also stoplight reports. I really love to talk with partners around when you have a goal and then you have some action steps, stoplight reports with the green that it's going well, the yellow that it's in progress, or the red that we have a barrier. It's a really nice, clean way for a leader to meet with their team on a regular basis and celebrate those wins. Start with what's going well, know that the work is getting done, and then help them remove the barriers with the reds, like help them get that completed. So, when I think about these, I just want to share a couple of partners that we have that
Yeah.
I love the way they're using that 3-2-1. For example, at the end of a survey rollout, I've seen partners put their, they go in and they listen and then they share the 3-2-1 around what they learned from their survey rollout.
Yeah, and that's as you talk about those tools, they seem not real difficult, right, Kathy? I mean they're pretty not always easy to apply. It takes practice and build it into the systems, but they're not overly complicated to apply. And I think you presented four that just are really meaningful types of ways that we can do something with that feedback, gather it and take action on it and build those improvements. So just that as I think about our listeners, this is not something that has to be overly complicated. We can listen, simplify, and act very strategically. So thanks for sharing those. So as we close today, you've been in the field for years and working with our partners, and again, just doing such great work with our partners as a coach and providing them with good guidance. What are some of the greatest lessons that you've learned as they're listening to learn and you're using feedback as a gift?
Really, I would really start with that listening to learn as a discipline.
Mm.
Think about how you listen, and it's something that you can get better at. You can create a structure for it. You can do it with intention, and with practice, you can do it. I remember when I was becoming a better listener, I had to think about what I was doing that was interrupting that listening and how the message that I was receiving, what barriers I was putting up as the listener. So my first one would really be that it's a discipline that you can learn. And then those small, consistent behaviors matter more than those big, grandiose things that you do. So if you're going to sit down and listen, pay that ridiculous attention, ask, share what you're going to do about it, and then do something about it. That's very consistent, very straightforward. And then one of the things that you always talk about, Janet, that I really appreciate is as we're doing this work, those bright spots are our most underused accelerators. When people feel good, you're going to get this work done. So that one. And then lastly, I just say that the feedback again, and I mentioned this a little earlier, it's never about the person, it's always about the system.
Yeah, so good, Kathy. As you're talking, you're just making me think deeply about some things related to listening and the self-reflection. As I think about same with what you were talking about, as I was learning to listen as a leader, I wouldn't automatically come into the world listening, as a leader. I really had to focus on it. And it's a great, I love what you said there, a great intentional act. It's with great intention that we listen with very focused approaches to how we process that and how we discipline. I love the word discipline ourselves to be good listeners so that we can do the best for those that we serve. Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you for the mini masterclass that you shared with our group last week. Valuable information and valuable work that we can all do together. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, Janet. I appreciate your time and this opportunity.
Thank you, Kathy, for reminding us that feedback is a gift given to us from others because it helps us improve. As leaders, we're able to see feedback as a gift when we engage with an open mind in consistent processes to gather data, review input, and act on what we learn. If we don't listen to feedback with the intention to learn, though, we limit the power of feedback and what is being shared with us. As Kathy shared, feedback isn't personal. When receiving feedback, assume good intentions and keep an open mind. As we enter the process of listening to learn and gathering feedback, we enter a process of improvement. And improvement allows us all to get better for the sake of our colleagues, our students, and our communities. As you tackle the task of listening to learn and accepting feedback as a gift, remember, it isn't personal. It's improvement. Have a great week, everyone.